Hey, welcome to a new video. Black Dolphin Prison, officially Penal Colony Number 6, is located in Soledetsk near the Kazakh border and is considered one of Russia's most infamous high-security institutions. Originally established in 1745, it was transformed in 2000 into a facility for inmates serving life sentences. The nickname comes from a black dolphin sculpture at the entrance, created by an inmate. Around 700 prisoners are held here, convicted of heinous crimes, collectively responsible for over 3,500 victims. Inmates live in extreme isolation, locked in small 6.5 by 11.5 feet or 2 by 3.5 meters cells for 23 hours a day, with concrete furniture and only a narrow slit for a window. Movement within the facility is done blindfolded to prevent memorizing escape routes, while guards check in every 15 minutes. Privacy does not exist. Exercise is allowed only in small cages outside. The harsh conditions, including total isolation and intense psychological pressure, have sparked international human rights concerns. In 2016, a non-life sentence inmate escaped from a lower security section, but no lifer has ever broken out. Black Dolphin's reputation as an inescapable living hell makes it a waking nightmare where death is the only release. Documentaries like those by National Geographic capture its chilling atmosphere, featuring inmates like Vladimir Nikolaev, a known cannibal, as disturbing examples.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
Located about 124 miles or 200 kilometers from Damascus in the Syrian desert, Tadmore Prison was infamous for its inhumane conditions until its destruction by ISIS in 2015. It was used to detain opponents of Bashar al-Assad's regime and became notorious for torture and executions. The windowless cells were often pitch dark, with no beds, lighting, or sanitation, just a hole in the ground as a toilet. Mold, disease, and utter neglect were rampant, while inmates endured severe physical and psychological abuse. In the 1980s, nearly 1,000 prisoners were massacred by defense brigades, solidifying Tadmore's reputation as hell on earth. Prisoners were regularly beaten, and many died under highly questionable circumstances. Its remote desert location amplified the sense of despair. Escape was impossible. Political detainees suffered malnutrition, filth, and total abandonment. Some were forced to drink contaminated water, worsening already dire health. Though the prison was destroyed in 2015, its horrifying legacy lives on as a symbol of dehumanization and human rights abuse. Known as Alligator Alcatraz, this detention center in Florida has drawn heavy criticism for its brutal conditions, especially since it holds many immigrants with no criminal record. Recent reports have raised human rights alarms. Detainees are plagued by mosquitoes, denied proper meals, and given minimal medical care. Cells are ice cold and flooded with harsh fluorescent lighting, making sleep nearly impossible. Some inmates claim they receive just one meal per day, occasionally infested with maggots, and no outdoor access is allowed. One account described a naked prisoner being transferred, while another was left in the blazing heat as punishment, swarmed by insects. Overcrowded cells, overflowing toilets, and abysmal hygiene conditions make life here unbearable. Its isolated location and oppressive regime have drawn comparisons to Alcatraz. Ongoing lawsuits claim prisoners are denied contact with lawyers or family. Unlike typical prisons, Alligator Alcatraz mainly holds detainees without convictions, raising serious ethical questions. Critics argue it's designed more to break people than to uphold justice. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, located in Kiambu County near Nairobi, is notorious for horrific conditions and human rights violations. Built in 1954 by British colonial authorities to house 1,400 inmates, it often holds over 3,000 prisoners. The overcrowded cells are filthy, spreading diseases like cholera, tuberculosis, and HIV. Originally used to detain Mau Mau rebels, it remains a site of suffering. Nutrition is poor, clean drinking water is scarce, and medical care is nearly non-existent. Inmates face abuse, intimidation, and exploitation, with rampant corruption by staff. The colonial-era gallows, last used in 1987, still stand, a haunting reminder of the past. In 2008, riots erupted following a contraband search, and in 2021, 3 inmates escaped with the help of prison guards, highlighting systemic issues. On its 1,200-hectare grounds, Kamiti functions less as a place of rehabilitation and more as a zone of punishment and despair. Near Harare, Chikurubi, Maximum Security Prison in Zimbabwe is infamous for cruel conditions and extreme overcrowding. Designed for 1,300 inmates, it often holds up to 100 men per cell meant for just 30. The resulting squalor spreads diseases like tuberculosis, while food rations are minimal and malnutrition is rampant. Medical care is virtually non-existent. The cells, 30 by 13 feet or 9 by 4 meters, are suffocating, causing immense physical and psychological stress. Abuse by guards is common, and numerous human rights violations have been documented. High-profile detainees like activist Evan Mawarire and journalist Hopewell Chinono were imprisoned under harsh conditions for political reasons. In 2007, during an alleged coup plot, inmate Albert Matapo claimed to have suffered unimaginable torture. Chikurubi has had only one successful escape, carried out by criminals Chidumo and Masandeke, highlighting both its tight security and internal dysfunction, with poor hygiene, scarce clean water, and repeated outbreaks of disease. Survival. Here is a daily battle. The Terrorism Confinement Center, opened in January 2023 in Tekaluka, is the largest maximum security prison in Latin America, with space for 40,000 inmates. Currently housing between 15,000 and 20,000 prisoners, most are suspected gang members. Built under President Bucca's state of emergency, the complex has been described as a concrete and steel pit designed to imprison people without officially applying the death penalty. Conditions inside are severe. Cells hold up to 80 men, stacked 4 high and metal bunk beds without mattresses. Lights stay on 24/7. Toilets and sinks offer no privacy. There is little ventilation, and daytime temperatures reach 95 degrees Fahrenheit, or 35 degrees Celsius. Inmates' gang tattoos are used by guards for segregation and punishment. The facility cost $400 million, partially funded by China, and prisoners have less than 3 square feet or 1 square meter of personal space. Inmates are confined nearly all day, with only 30 minutes of basic exercise allowed in a hallway. No visits, no letters, and no contact with lawyers or family are permitted, leading some to call it a legal black hole. As of early 2025, deported Venezuelans with no criminal records have reported spoiled food, abuse, lack of medical care, and no access to legal counsel. Critics call it Guantanamo on steroids, a place where inmates are meant to disappear and never return. Once Uganda's only maximum security prison, Luzer, located near Kampala, holds over 8,000 inmates, nearly 5 times its intended capacity of 1,700. This extreme overcrowding has made it notorious for inhumane conditions. According to Human Rights Watch, 124 prisoners shared a space of just 26 square feet, or 8 square meters, often sleeping without mattresses, blankets, or ventilation. Sanitation and nutrition are disastrous. Prisoners mostly survive on maize porridge and beans, often in inadequate amounts. Many suffer from malnutrition, anemia, and serious illness, worsened by forced labor and the near-total lack of health care. Rebel leader Jamilu Mukulu described his cell as cramped and filled with mosquitoes, where he was confined 15 hours daily with only a bucket for a toilet. Despite having diabetes and COVID-19, he received no medical help and was physically assaulted for attempting human contact. Opposition leader Kizza Besigye has been in solitary confinement since November 2024 behind multiple locked doors, treatment that rights observers call degrading. His wife reported that he lost weight, suffered from dizziness after days without food, and was denied access to his personal doctor. Between 2003 and 2009, Camp Bucca was the largest internment facility run by the U.S. military in Iraq. Over 100,000 people were held there, many without charges or trial, including Iraqis, foreign fighters, and suspected insurgents. Former detainees described it as worse than Abu Ghraib, itself infamous for abuse scandals. In early interviews, prisoners reported being forced to stand in the sun without water, using trenches as toilets, and wearing the same clothes for months. A 2003 Amnesty International report condemned heat exposure, lack of clean water, and filthy conditions. Prisoners developed chronic coughs and skin infections from the squalid tent camps. A 2004 U.S. military investigation found gross violations of international law. The Red Cross reported blindfolding, painful stress positions, and denial of contact during interrogations. One former inmate, Hassam Shaltilt, claimed he was tied like a pig and had live scorpions placed on him by guards. In 2008, 6 Marines were charged with locking inmates in pepper spray-filled cells. Most detainees lived in tents, exposed to desert temperatures exceeding 122 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius. Chinchung Prison, China's only national-level detention center, is known for holding high-profile political prisoners. Built in the 1950s and still in use today, it enforces a strict hierarchy that dictates food, exercise, medical care, visitation rights, and cell conditions. Lower-ranked prisoners endure harsh conditions, with minimal food, almost no showers, and only 20 minutes of outdoor time per day alone. During the Cultural Revolution, some inmates reportedly went years without bathing, and long-term solitary confinement in cold, dark cells led to serious physical and psychological damage. Political prisoners are forbidden from communicating with each other or the outside world, turning Chinchung into a tool of control, not a rehabilitation. Meals reflect social rank: meat, fruit, and milk for the elite, thin gruel and grains for the rest. The system embodies a deliberate strategy of isolation and dehumanization. Located in Bogotá, La Modello is Colombia's most violent and chaotic prison, housing about 11,000 inmates, divided into wings for left-wing rebels and right-wing paramilitaries. The central yard has frequently been the scene of deadly unrest, as guards are often unarmed while some inmates possess illegal weapons. On April 27, 2000, over 100 prisoners were killed in a massive conflict between factions, prompting reforms and tighter security. But violence persists. In 2016, after heavy rain, over 100 decomposing bodies were discovered in the sewer system under the prison, triggering global outrage. On March 21, 2020, a riot broke out over COVID fears and overcrowding, resulting in 23 deaths and 83 injuries. La Modello once had inmate-run restaurants and shops sponsored by groups like FARC, but most were shut down after the 2000 massacre. Even the prison leadership is under threat. In May 2024, Director Elmer Fernandez was assassinated by gunmen while driving home. Pyak Island has earned its reputation as the Alcatraz of Russia, where the country's most dangerous criminals are held. The prison is located on a small island called Ogeni Ostrov. Like Alcatraz, Pyak Island is a place where you can't just escape. If inmates try to dig, they end up in the water, and if they try to swim away, they are sure to be spotted by the guards. Aside from the freezing temperatures brought on by the surrounding lake, conditions inside the prison are made even more unbearable by the lack of facilities and extremely strict rules that some consider inhumane. Inmates are locked up for 23 hours a day and are only allowed 2 visits a year. There are also no toilets or proper facilities for washing. A prison psychologist who works here named Svetlana even says that this place is very bad for people. The first few months, the prisoners adjust with the rules, but after a few years, they don't care anymore. Located on the outskirts of Cape Town, Tadmore Prison is infamous for severe overcrowding, holding over 8,000 inmates in a facility built for only 4,000. In one pre-trial detention cell meant for 19 men, inspectors found 86 prisoners packed in like logs, with just one toilet and a single cold shower. One inspector described the air as suffocating and dense, contributing to the spread of tuberculosis, skin infections, and other diseases due to filthy mattresses and poor hygiene. Inmates in pre-trial sections often wait months or even years for a hearing, frequently without legal representation. Psychological pressure is intensified by the dominance of the numbers gang, 26s, 27s, 28s, which controls food distribution, punishes dissenters, and fosters violence. In 2015, the Constitutional Court ruled that the conditions were unconstitutional, calling for reduced overcrowding, better care, and more inmate exercise. While the number of inmates has slightly decreased, fundamental issues remain. TB rates are still 5 times higher than in the general population. Notably, Nelson Mandela was once briefly imprisoned here. Camp 22, also known as the Huryong Prison Camp, is a maximum security area that is completely sealed off from the world. In fact, little is known about the prison. Information about prison living conditions comes only from former prisoners who successfully escaped. There are no photos of the camp, only some satellite images of how large the area looks. The camps in North Korea have continually grown, with now over 200,000 prisoners. One of the reasons the population in the camps continues to grow is that sometimes entire families are being detained for wrong political beliefs. This means that there are also children who are born and grow up in the prison camps. According to former guards, the conditions are very harsh. The prisoners are sometimes described as walking skeletons. Topo Chico, a state prison in Monterrey, Mexico, housed over 4,000 inmates by late 2015, 35% over capacity. In February 2016, a violent riot erupted between rival Zetas factions led by LZ-27 and El Credo. Dozens died, fires broke out, and chaos lasted for hours. One guard used his weapon on an inmate and was later charged, drawing heavy criticism of prison management. Afterwards, searches revealed extreme corruption, including luxury cells for gang leaders, with king-size beds, air conditioning, refrigerators, digital TVs, and even saunas. Some inmates operated food stalls, bars, and Santa Muerte altars, demanding bribes and controlling access to basic needs. Regular inmates slept in hallways or were forced to rent cell space at extortionate prices. Gangs held keys to cell blocks, smuggled weapons, and dominated common areas, effectively taking over prison authority. The riot led to the firing and arrest of both the warden and the prison director. Carandiru Prison in Sao Paulo was built in 1920 by Samuel das Neves to meet the new requirements of Brazil's 1890 Penal Code. At one time, it was the largest prison in South America, holding more than 8,000 inmates. The conditions in this place were so unbearable that it was known to be the biggest human rights violations the country ever recorded. The real challenge occurred at the end of the 20th century, when the prison became overcrowded and there were many more prisoners than guards. There were also frequent riots in the prison, and in addition, the prison suffered from food shortages, which led to malnutrition and other diseases. It is thought that this prison was the inspiration for the television series Prison Break. The Carandiru Prison was finally demolished in 2002 and now serves as a museum that is open to the public. Mendoza Prison in Argentina is notorious for inhumane overcrowding and underfunded infrastructure, particularly in pretrial detention units. Human rights organizations report that wings designed for 30 inmates often house 2 to 3 times that number. This overcrowding leads to respiratory illnesses, mental breakdowns, and rampant violence. Prisoners often share cells with both violent and non-violent offenders, creating chaos under minimal supervision. Reports describe overflowing toilets, permanently sealed windows, and a lack of heating or air conditioning. In winter, temperatures drop below freezing. In summer, heat becomes unbearable without ventilation. In 2023, pretrial detainees went on a 2-week hunger strike to protest months without court hearings. Medical neglect is systemic, with untreated infections and fatal food-related illnesses. An informal barter economy thrives, where food is smuggled in via visitors or corrupt guards. Cigarettes serve as currency, and bribes buy better living conditions. The Diyarbakir Prison is located in southeastern Turkey and is sometimes described as the Hell of Diyarbakir. It is said to be so extreme there that it was considered by several news outlets to be one of the most notorious prisons in the world. But not because it was overcrowded or lacked basic amenities. No, there is a much darker reason for this. The leadership at the prison reportedly used their own system to punish the inmates. They use various forms of discipline that could be considered inhumane. Therefore, the punishments are too gruesome to tell you in this YouTube video. According to the former mayor of Diyarbakir, the prison also has a welcoming ritual for new prisoners that is not welcoming at all. So now the authorities are also working on plans to replace the prison with a human rights museum. Juba National Prison, designed for 300 to 500 inmates, now holds nearly 2,800 people, including over 1,500 pretrial detainees. Among them are people with mental illness, individuals on death row, and even 4 women and 8 children detained alongside their mothers. Conditions are dire, with little to no water, minimal food, and no medical care after suppliers withdrew due to unpaid bills. Eyewitnesses report that hunger, dehydration, and disease, especially in cells made from shipping containers, have led to multiple deaths. Though these containers lie outside the official prison building, they're used for long-term detention. Amnesty International documented cases where dozens of inmates nearly suffocated after being locked in the containers for days without adequate ventilation. Even those facing serious charges are often detained indefinitely without trial, legal aid, or family contact. Oversight is non-existent, and hearings are repeatedly postponed. With starvation diets, metal box cells, and zero transparency, Juba ranks among the most dangerous prisons in the world. At Urga Prison in Mongolia, they have found a way to make the prison cells even more unbearable. The prison is known for locking the prisoners in wooden crates. The crates are only 1 square meter, and if you have to stay in them for a while, it is no fun. In addition, the Urga Prison is surrounded by 5-meter high pointed poles. Each crate has a small hole through which the prisoners can be fed. They spend most of their time in these crates, which are often hidden in the dark dungeons of the prison as well. Because of the way the crates are built, they cannot even sit or lie down, and they are handcuffed as well. So you could say that this is one of the worst prisons in the world that you definitely don't want to end up in. The Granja Penal de Pavon, near Guatemala City, became infamous in the 1990s, when prison staff relinquished internal control to the inmates themselves. Inside, prisoners built their own power structures and collaborated with powerful convicts in illegal trade and smuggling. From the late 1970s until 2006, guards monitored only the perimeter while inmates ran the daily operations, businesses, and internal security. In March 1989, over 200 inmates staged a takeover, held staff hostage, and caused deaths, triggering violent crackdowns. In September 2006, the government retook control with 3,000 officers and soldiers. The raid left at least 7 inmates dead, including self-declared prison boss Luis Cepeda. Pavon also houses Guatemala's death row, where prisoners have been executed by lethal injection. The legacy of Pavon remains dark, an institution where the state ceded control to criminal factions until a dramatic and deadly military intervention. Bangkwang Central Prison has become known as one of the most notorious prisons in Thailand and in fact in all of Asia. The prison was built between 1927 and 1931 by order of King Rama V and was intended to be a prison for the worst criminals. In fact, it was said to be so bad that some prisoners lost their sanity over time. Most prisoners sleep in very small rooms, and things are regularly smuggled in easily. In this prison, there is also a system called chit. This system allows you to get certain food based on how much power you have. The lower class can only use the free food, which consists of a bowl of rice and some vegetables. So the upper class can get more food and also better quality. Black Beach Prison, built in the 1940s under Spanish colonial rule and later used under a dictatorship, is located in Malabo and notorious for political repression and extreme neglect. Although its capacity is reportedly under 100, inmates are crammed into dark, airless cells with no natural light, fresh air, or contact with the outside world, often subjected to forced labor and horrific conditions. Medical care is almost non-existent. Wounds and illnesses go untreated. Food is scarce, and contaminated water combined with poor sanitation adds to the health risks. Under dictator Francisco Macias Nguema, political opponents were imprisoned and often eliminated, making the facility feel more like an execution site than a prison. More recently, South African oil workers have allegedly been detained without charges in retaliation by Vice President Teodoro Obiang. For many, the punishment goes beyond incarceration. Black Beach is a hidden instrument of terror. Food is minimal, forced labor is unpaid, prisoners are mistreated during transfers, and access for the UN or humanitarian groups is virtually impossible. No prison is as overcrowded as the one at Gitarama in Rwanda, a country in East Africa. It holds thousands of prisoners who cannot even lie down or sit down because there is simply no space. 4 people have to share 1 square meter while standing. Gitarama Prison was built with a capacity of only 500 prisoners, but in reality, there are more than 7,000 people there, and dozens more are added every day. You may be wondering, how did the population here get so big? It is because of the Rwandan genocide that took place in 1994. As a result, thousands of people were imprisoned to pay for their crimes. As the years went by, the failing legal system in the country made this number even larger. This place is not known as one of the most dangerous prisons in the world for no reason. Unfortunately, the Rwandan government also does not have the resources to make the changes and can only pin its hopes on international aid. Evan Prison, located in northern Tehran, was built in the 1970s under the Shah and later expanded. It holds an estimated 15,000 prisoners, including political activists, journalists, foreign nationals, and dissidents, earning it the nickname Evan University. Conditions are harsh. Overcrowded cells packed with bunk beds, infestations, and insufficient or contaminated food. Leaked footage from 2020 and 2021 revealed widespread abuse, intimidation, and denial of medical care. even during fainting or injury. In isolation, units like Ward 209, inmates endure constant lighting, sensory deprivation, and crushing psychological pressure. Former detainees like Marina Nemat and Anushe Ashuri reported brutal interrogations, sleep deprivation, and total disconnection from the outside world. Women suffer especially. Overcrowded quarters, lack of privacy, poor hygiene, and limited toilet or shower access. In October 2024, Kurdish activist Varshay Moradi held a 20-day hunger strike to protest coerced interrogations and lack of legal defense. In May and June 2025, prisoners demanded medical aid from Modello Ahmadian, who needed urgent surgery but was denied release due to unaffordable bail. On June 23, 2025, part of Evan was destroyed in an airstrike, killing or injuring dozens and damaging the visitation center, clinic, and multiple wings. ADX. Florence is an American prison in Colorado, known as the Alcatraz of the Rocky Mountains. This is one of the most secure prisons in the world that no one has ever escaped from and houses the most dangerous criminals in the country. It opened in Florence, Colorado in 1994 as a supermax prison, meaning it has the highest security level of any other maximum security prison. The inmates are locked up separately for 23 hours a day in cells made of concrete, so they can't harm themselves. In their cells, they have a desk, a sitting area, and a bed that is also largely made of concrete. In addition, the prison contains a large number of sensors and cameras, and more than 1,400 remotely controlled steel doors. This is where the most notorious criminals are held. Think, for example, of the Mexican kingpin El Chapo, Ted Kaczynski, and many more. Located near Caracas, El Rodeo is one of Venezuela's most dangerous prisons. Designed for 1,600 inmates, it often holds over 4,000, with extreme overcrowding and gang dominance. In July 2012, a major uprising erupted when armed inmates battled over control of illegal trade networks inside. Around 25 people, including visitors, were killed. Inmates formed powerful networks with the help of corrupt guards, and unrest persisted despite reform efforts. Survivors report poor treatment, almost no medical care, and extreme heat or dampness in flooded cells. Viral videos show guards standing by while inmates fight, and reports mention hunger strikes, hostage situations, and family members detained during riots. Even food distribution is partly run by gangs. With poor ventilation, overflowing sewage, and diseases like TB and skin infections, El Rodeo is a place where freedom doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes staying inside feels just as dangerous as getting out. The Nairobi Prison, located in Kenya, is not only overcrowded with over 3,000 inmates in a space designed for only 800 people, but the prison is also known for its cells that are built like cages. In some cases, 12 prisoners had to share a cell with each other where normally only 3 people could fit. In each cell, or rather cage, there are only 2 mattresses without blankets. But the temperature inside is also tremendously warm, so they probably don't need the blankets. There is barely room for them to move, not to mention the smell and garbage. What is most disturbing is that many of the prisoners who have endured these hellish living conditions have not yet been sentenced, and are therefore still in prison for years waiting for the court to hold their trial. Ince Prison in Yangon, built in 1887 under British rule, is Myanmar's main detention center and a symbol of state violence. Originally designed for 5,000 inmates, it held over 15,000 in 2022, including activists, journalists, ethnic minorities, and civilians. Serious illnesses are often ignored until it's too late. Then prisoners are sent to a poorly equipped hospital where many die from complications and unhygienic conditions. Sanitation is minimal. Prisoners wash with shared water bowls, and bucket toilets sometimes require payment. Reports describe beatings, crawling across gravel, and fear-inducing attacks by dogs. Inmates receive no mats, no spare clothes, and no blankets, regardless of heat or rain. Political prisoners are detained without trial, denied lawyers, and subjected to psychological torment. There are accounts of forced confessions, public humiliation, and death notifications withheld from families. Ince isn't just a prison, it's a machine of fear and silence. The most dangerous and worst of all is Lasabanada, the national prison of Maracaibo located in Venezuela. You might think that the most dangerous prisons are the ones with maximum security, but what if I told you that there was a prison with no security and supervision and where the inmates were running the place? This was exactly what happened at Lasabanada Prison. There were about 3,700 prisoners, while this place was built for only 700 prisoners. The prison was run by its own inmates for 55 years, until it was closed in 2013. There were raids by the government from time to time, and each time they found large amounts of banned substances and weapons. They even reportedly found a lot of exotic animals once. But now that the prison is closed, plans are being made to reopen it as a museum. Number 12, also known as the Chongori Re-Education Camp in North Hamgyong Province, is a forced labor prison for both criminal and political prisoners. Unlike North Korea's lifelong camps, Kyohwa-so facilities technically have end dates, though many die before release due to exhaustion, disease, or starvation. Satellite images and testimonies from the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea reveal prisoners living next to open copper mines with no safety protocols. Inmates suffer from chronic malnutrition, contaminated water, and disease from toxic mine runoff. A strict ranking system determines access to food, healthcare, and visits. Lower-ranked prisoners are punished with solitary confinement in dark cells and extra forced labor. Though called a re-education camp, Chongori is in truth a slow-motion death camp, where people are worked until they collapse, mining copper for export without any external oversight. Rehabilitation is not the goal. Erasure is. Have you ever visited a prison? And if so, what was your experience like? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen, or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.